Hello, listeners. It's Gunter Swoboda here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspire Change with Gunter. If your organization cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspire Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number 1 in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire Change with Gunter. I'm your host, and today I want to bring a couple of things together. One is that there's a brand new Australian survey on boys and masculinity. Very interesting. And I also want to intertwine with that my own research on what I call the masculine introject. And I'll explain that as I get to it. Now, if you care about boys, fathers, schools, therapy, or the future of masculinity, this one's for you. So let me set the scene. A recent national survey of Australian adolescents aged between 14 and 18 was conducted by the Men's Project at Jesuit Social Services. And it was summarised by Professor Michael Flood, a long-time researcher on men, masculinities, and violence prevention. Now, in some ways, unfortunately, the findings are both familiar and disturbing. They tell us quite a bit. What is it that they do tell us? Well, firstly, the pressure on boys to be real men is still strong. Most boys don't fully buy into the rigid stereotype, but a solid minority still holds beliefs that are harmful to themselves and others. And the more strongly boys cling to those rigid norms, the more likely they are to hurt or be hurt. Now, I want to walk you through some of the key findings because they're really quite interesting and they also intersect with my work, my research on what I call the masculine introject. That is that internal voice that ties a boy's worth to control, competence, and invulnerability. So let me start with a survey. The research looks at what they call the adolescent man box, a set of 27 rules about how a real man is supposed to think, feel, and act. And there are 6 findings in plain language. Pressure to be manly is still intense. Around 60 to 63% of both boys and girls said that people expect teenage boys to be confident, strong, and manly at all times. Now, that's important. It means that boys aren't just imagining this, girls see it too. So, the culture that we're in still broadcasts a very clear message. You're allowed to be a boy, but only if you stick to the script. Secondly, most boys are more open-minded than the stereotypes, which is really interesting. So there is some good news. When you look at all 27 man box rules, most boys don't endorse most of them. In fact, there are only 3 rules that got majority support. So the caricature of teenage boys as a pack of rigid sexist troglodytes is fundamentally lazy and it's certainly wrong. But there is a sting in the tail. Somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 10 boys hold attitudes that excuse or support violence and control in sex and relationships. And about 1 in 5 reported engaging in bullying, physical violence, or sexual harassment in the previous month. So it's not all boys, and it's not just a few bad apples. It's a sizable minority living alongside a more open minded majority. Boys are still more likely than girls to believe the rigid norms. Third, essentially, what that means is that there's a clear gender gap. Boys and girls both see the social pressure, but boys are much, much more likely to personally endorse the man box stuff. For example, statements about constantly trying to act manly are endorsed by roughly a quarter to almost half of boys, but only about 8 to 15% of girls. Rules about emotional restriction get support from about 7 to 34% of the boys compared to 2 to 14% of the girls. So boys are not only feeling the pressure, they also more likely to internalize it. Now, that gap has consequences on lots of stuff friendships, dating, classrooms. If twice as many boys as girls believe that they have to hide fear and sadness, that shapes how they show up with one another in the relationship. A lot of boys now think boys have it harder. We see a complicated mix of support for equality and a sense of male grievance. Almost everyone in the survey agrees that boys should treat girls and women as equals. At the same time, about 42% of boys and 13% of girls agree that in Australia today, boys have it harder than girls. So boys are hearing a language of equality, but many feel that they're the ones now on the back foot. That perception can come from multiple places. Real male vulnerabilities like suicide rates and school disengagement, defensive reactions to changing gender roles, and the influence of the manosphere, those online spaces that frame boys and men as victims of feminism. The survey can't fully disentangle all of that, but it shows the tension. One of the other things the survey showed was that peers and parents matter a lot. The research confirms that many of us see clinically parents and peers are powerful shapers of boys' attitude. Now, the data in particular lines up with other studies showing that when fathers strongly endorse traditional male ideology, their sons are more likely to do the same. So, this isn't just about media or TikTok. It's about what boys see and hear at home, on the sports field, and in the group chat. Now, here's the really important one, and that is the stronger the norms, the more the harm. And this is the final point in this survey that was summarized. The survey shows that the more strongly boys buy into rigid masculine rules, the worse the outcome. Boys who sit deep in the man box are less likely to seek help for personal issues, less likely to say that anyone really knows them, more likely to blame victims of domestic violence, more likely to consume violent pornography, and far more likely to admit to bullying, physical violence, and sexual harassment. One figure stands out. Among boys with the highest support for the man box, around 39% reported using bullying, physical violence, and sexual harassment in the past month, compared with about 7% among boys with the lowest support. So this isn't just an abstract cultural debate. The man box shows up in wherever boys feel known, whether they seek help or whether they harm others. The article ends with a clear call. If we're serious about this, we need to scale up gender equality and especially the approaches in schools, parenting programs, sports, workplaces, and online spaces. And we need to address both boys' pain and the harm some boys do. So that's the landscape. Now, let me put this inside what I call the masculine introject, which is the inner echo of the man box. In my own work, I've been developing this idea because I'm looking at, how does that play out in therapeutic relationships? Because as a male therapist, I need to acknowledge that I can be as prone to this as somebody else. Now, in many respects, I've done many years of therapy and training, so I'm less likely maybe to respond unconsciously to the man box norms. So, what am I saying with the masculine introject? Well, in plain terms, it's an internalized voice that says your worth as a male depends on being in control, being competent, and not being vulnerable. But this is not just a set of beliefs that you could maybe debate over coffee. It is literally a felt authority inside your head and your body. So when you hear this, choke back tears because this isn't the time, push through the pain because real men don't complain, feel like a failure if you can't fix something immediately, hide your confusion because you're supposed to have it together, that's when that voice, that masculine introject comes into play. What this new survey describes on a social level is that the man box, the pressure, the gender gap, the link to harm is precisely what the masculine introject looks like on a psychological level. Think of it this way. The survey tells us how common the man box rules are and what they predict. The masculine introject is what happens when those rules move inside a boy and become his inner commentator. So when the study finds that over half of boys feel pressured to be confident and strong, a significant minority actively endorse emotional restriction, and those who cling hardest to the rules are more lonely and violent, then the masculine introject is a good candidate for the mechanism that links all of that together. It's the bridge between out there and in here. So, how might this look like inside the boy's mind? Well, let's make this a lot more concrete. Take a 15-year-old boy who knows in his head that boys crying is okay, has heard about mental health and speaking up, but still feels ashamed every time his voice shakes. Socially, he might be a part of the majority who don't fully endorse the old script. Internally, his masculine introject is alive and well. So, in a moment of distress, it might say, don't fall apart. you'll look weak. If you open up, they'll use it against you.
Greetings, listeners. It's that time of year again. Yes, you heard me. The holidays, they're fast approaching, and we all know what that means. Parties, gatherings, work and business socials. Well, science has evolved, and there is no reason to waste time trying to recover from a night of celebrating. You may know what I mean if you have ever had a few too many. That dreaded next morning where your head is pounding and you can't fathom the thought of getting up to use the restroom. Horrible. That's why we believe in the scientific triumph that is morning recovery. It's scientifically formulated to help you bounce back after a night of drinking. It's made with ingredients like milk thistle and ginseng to help you recover from last night's festivities. Plus, it's loaded with electrolytes and B vitamins that replenish lost nutrients. It is seriously a game changer. And your new drink one before having a good time and wake up ready for anything drink. So head to morelabs.com to use your code. That's 25% off when you use our code Inspire Change, or go to the link www.morelabs.com/discount/Inspire Change for your convenience. We've placed the link and more information on More Labs in the show notes. We hope More Labs makes a difference for you, and we would love your testimonial. Please see the show notes for our contact information.
You should be able to handle this alone. Now, notice the alignment with the survey here. It's the pressure to be strong and in control, there's emotional restriction, and there's a reluctance to seek help. Now, imagine he lashes out at someone. The same inner voice might then attack him. You're out of control, you're dangerous, you're a bad person. Now, he swings between performing toughness and a secret inner shame. And he doesn't feel truly known by anyone. The survey numbers about boys feeling unknown or not seeking help match that pattern disturbingly well. So when we talk about shifting masculinity, we can't just preach new ideas in front of the classroom. We have to go after the internalized critic that's running an identity test. One important nuance in the conversation piece is the call to balance pain and privilege. Boys suffer under rigid masculine norms, and some boys also use those norms to justify harming others. The masculine introject captures the double reality nicely. On the pain side, the introject says, punish boys for being sad, scared, or confused. It erodes their sense of being known and loved as they are, and it drives them away from help, especially when they most need it. Now, on the privilege side, the same introject legitimizes dominance in friendships and dating, casts girls and femininity as lesser or dangerous, and licenses violence as a way to assert control. So the inner critic just doesn't hurt the boy. It also teaches him it is acceptable to hurt in order to regain his status. That's why the survey link between strong man box endorsement and higher bullying, harassment, and victim blaming is so significant. The more rigid the masculine introject, the more a boy will punish himself internally and external that punishment onto others. If we ignore either side, we miss the full picture. So, the survey also highlights the role of parents and peers, especially dads. Sons tend to mirror the level of traditionalism they see in their fathers. From a psychological point of view, that's exactly how an introject is formed. A boy just doesn't copy what his father says. He copies the tone of voice, the body language, the way his father treats his own pain, the silence around certain topics. And if a dad never asks for help, the boy also learns that help seeking is unmanly. If dad mocks softness in other men, the boys learn being gentle is risky. If peers ridicule vulnerability, the boy learns feelings are social death. Over time, that chorus of messages condenses into a single internal voice that sounds like authority. And that's the masculine introject. So when we talk about changing masculine culture, it's not just a slogan. It's about interrupting the transmission of that inner critic across generations. So where's my research heading? Well, in my own research, both clinically and academically, I'm very interested in how this masculine introject operates in therapy and in the training of therapists, especially male therapists. Because here's the difficult truth. Many male clients bring a strong masculine introject into the therapy room. And many male therapists have their own partly hidden version of it. For the client, the introject says, don't be too needy. Don't make a fuss. Don't fall apart. For the therapist, it can say, you must have the answers. You mustn't show uncertainty. And you must be the calm expert at all times. Now, I'm sure by now you can see the problem. Two men sitting in a room, both policed by the inner critic, and about feeling unknown. That doesn't quite magically vanish at 18. They walk straight into adult life, into workplaces, into relationships, and yes, into therapy. So my part of research, the part of my research that I'm putting out there is asking, how do we help male clients identify their masculine introject? How do we train male therapists to recognize and work with their own? And how can this concept support broader programs like the ones the article calls for in schools, sports, and in communities? Because if we can name this inner critic and loosen its grip, those social interventions suddenly have more room to land. So let me bring this to ground level. If you're a parent, especially a father, this research is a mirror. Ask yourself, what do my sons see me doing with my own stress? Do they ever see me admit I'm struggling? Do they see me apologize? Do they see me ask for help from a friend, a partner, a professional? Because if they never see that, your words about it's okay to talk will be drowned out by the unspoken rule. Real men cope alone. Now, if you're an educator, coach, or youth worker, this survey is a warning and an invitation. A warning that a substantial minority of boys still hold attitudes that excuse violence and silence emotion. It's an invitation to build curricula, team cultures, and rituals that actively contest that, not by shaming boys, but by widening their options. If you're a therapist, especially a male therapist, I'd invite you to notice your own version of the masculine introject. What does it say to you when you don't know what to do with a client, where you feel moved or teary in a session? You're criticized or challenged. If your inner critic says you mustn't show that, then you know the man box is in the room with you as well. And if you're a young man listening, I want to say this very clearly. You're not crazy about feeling pressure. The survey shows that you're right. It's there. Many boys do feel it. The masculine introject is loud, but it's not you. It's a set of inherited rules that can be examined, questioned, and rewritten. So, a simple reflection to take away. What I want to leave you with is one small reflection linked to the exercise I've used in talking about the masculine introject before. Sometime this week, when you feel yourself shutting down emotionally, getting harsh with yourself, or avoiding asking for help, pause. Ask What is the man voice in my head saying right now? Try to catch one sentence, just one. It might be, don't be weak, sort yourself out. No one wants to hear this. Notice it. You don't have to argue with it, just recognize. That's not the voice of my deepest self. That's the man box talking through me. Now, if you want to go a step further, ask if a 14-year-old boy I care about came to me with this problem, would I speak to him like that? If the answer is no, you've already created a crack in the interject. The crack is where a new, more human masculinity can grow. So, to pull it together, the new Australian survey shows that rigid masculine stereotypes are still shaping boys' lives. My work on the masculine interject helps explain how those external expectations become an inner critic that polices boys' emotions, relationships, and help seeking. And it's not conscious. By and large, it's subconscious and unconscious. If you want real change, we need both large-scale cultural work in schools, families, and communities, and deep psychological work that helps boys and men confront the inner voice that says you only count if you're in control. So if you've been listening to Inspire Change me, and if this has resonated, please share it with somebody else. Share it with a parent, a teacher, a coach, or a young man who might need to know he is not alone in this. So until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Until next time, this is me signing off.
Hello and welcome to all our listeners. This week we would like to express our gratitude to those of you listening in Alaska. Your continued support has brought Alaska to number 8 on the top 10 listeners list for the first time ever. Congratulations! And thank you to all our listeners in Anchorage for bringing your state to number 8. And our deepest gratitude for promoting positive social change. We now take a look at our global listeners list and want to give a big congratulations to Trinidad and Tobago for entering the top 25 global listeners list. We cannot express how grateful we are for your continued support around the world. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in and supporting positive social change. This makes you a part of Gunter's efforts in transforming not only men's lives, but lives in general, and we are grateful you have joined us. I, Devonna Prinzi, the co-executive producer, and our showrunner, Miranda Spigner-Sapone, sincerely thank you and ask that you please take the time to like, follow, subscribe, and share as your efforts make a difference to everyone here at Inspire Change with Gunter. Please remember, if you want to share your story of social change, feel free to reach out to the show directly. Please see the show notes for our contact information. As always, thank you to each and every one of our listeners. And most importantly, please keep inspiring positive social change.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.guntersvoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.